Okay, hello and welcome everybody. This is the first of a series of webinars, live presentations, and some blog posts about this topic of hybrid cloud. We as TopQore are well known for our SCOM monitoring, but we have always done other things as well in the areas of Microsoft design, management tooling, and of course monitoring as well. We have long believed in hybrid scenarios for running servers and applications for companies, and thus also for monitoring and management. Now, lately, Samir joined our team, who has been in the hybrid field for a few years now with different monitoring solutions based off SCOM and Azure Monitor, and also working on hybrid technologies, such as our topic for today, Azure Stack HCI. We thought it fitting to do a series of talks about Azure Stack HCI and hybrid cloud and hybrid management tooling such as Azure Arc. For these sessions, I will be the MC and ask questions and clarify, and Samir is going through the bulk of the content today. Samir, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Bob. So my name is Samir Maisekar, and I'm the newest consultant at TopQore. I've joined only very recently, but I've been in this space for a while now. Previously, I was working at Dell in the same space. I was hybrid, hybrid Azure hybrid technologies that also included Azure Stack HCI as well as some other things like VMware, VxRail, or Azure Stack Hub, and even a little bit of S2D, ready nodes. So Dell is kind of a giant when it comes to like infrastructure and data center solutions. So they have VMware, they have Microsoft, they have ESXi, they have a lot of things going on, right? So I was actually mostly focused on Azure Stack HCI and Hub, and I have recently kind of transitioned over to HCI than Hub because HCI is probably the hottest Azure hybrid story that is going on in the market today, right? So previously also I have worked with some on-prem technologies. I've worked on public clouds. I've worked on private clouds. So I think it's only fitting that I think I can safely claim that I know a little bit of both sides. So I have been working on public Azure as well and private cloud too. So I know what the challenges are. I know what the good things are, what the not so good things are, and how to address them basically, right? So yeah, so it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to carrying on with the series. Should we get into it then, Bob?
Yes, for sure. Let's get into it.
Cool. So let's spend some time on the basics, right? What is hybrid cloud? I just told you that I've been working in public cloud as well as private clouds. Let's go over the definitions, right, Bob? So what is a public cloud? What is a private cloud? And in turn, of course, then what is a hybrid cloud? Public cloud, by its very definition, is just running your services on someone else's computers, right? That is the simplest public cloud definition. You have your workloads, you have your servers, but you don't want to maintain or support or purchase or troubleshoot, set up your own infrastructure. So what you do is just want to run your business. So you go to a public cloud provider, go to let's say Microsoft. You tell them, please, can I rent some of your infrastructure and can I host my services on your infrastructure, right? Microsoft says, yeah, sure, why not? We have a great offering here, but what you have to do is you have to keep paying me for the time or for the usage that you are actually utilizing my services, right? So that is the very basic definition of public cloud. Then we have a private cloud, the traditional cloud, let's say, right? Private clouds are entirely purchased, maintained, troubleshooted, set up, and basically, everything that is start from procuring the servers to the end, like we are actually running the services, and not only running, but also maintaining the services. You're upgrading the services. You're responsible for upgrading your infrastructure, upgrading your software, your operating systems, right? All of these things are on you. Again, so you can say that's like two sides of a of a coin. So you in public cloud, you do give up some of that control over the underlying infrastructure. But in for the counter of that, what you get is you get convenience, right? Because public cloud is amazing when it comes to scaling up. It is amazing when it comes to high availability. It is amazing when it comes to troubleshooting or administration, especially, right? So when you got a single pane of consistent management going on for all of your resources, that is very, very, very easy to basically just maintain your services and make sure that your services are always up to the end user, right? That is the main advantage of public cloud. But then again, there are some cons. So what are the cons? The cost, of course. If you haven't, if you aren't careful, Bob, you and I, we run Azure instances, so you know what I'm talking about. If you're not careful, your cost is gonna like snowball like crazy. Like, so just keep a virtual machine running by mistake, and God forbid it is a powerful machine, then you're gonna get charged like crazy. Right? So you're gonna exhaust your budget just like that. So that is the main, let's say, caution. I won't call it a disadvantage particularly, but it is a caution that you have to like. Of course, somebody is giving you the convenience; they're gonna charge you for it. Nothing is free. But then you have to be cautious about how are you spending that in public cloud. Then you also have some security concerns. You have some compliance issues, right? So one of the biggest use cases for going for hybrid cloud or private cloud for that matter is actually compliance, right? Because there are a lot of things. It could be the law of the land, it could be the government compliances, it could be like the GDPR thing, or it could be the what is it called, HIPAA standards and all, right? So where you cannot disclose or you cannot send the data outside of the boundary of your land, let's say. So for example, I am in India, and I know that Indian government does not allow the data of the Indian citizens to leave the country's premises. So I cannot send my data anywhere outside India. And that is a very common compliance policy, right? So that is why in a lot of cases, you have to have your compute, you have to have your data center running on-prem just next to you. Okay. When I say next to you, of course, it's not just the adjacent building, but I mean, it should be in the vicinity where you can access, where you can control. Now, the cons of private cloud is also you have to maintain it, you have to control it, you have to start from the cooling, right? It's very small things, but these costs also add up, because in private cloud, what you do is you purchase a bunch of, let's say, servers, and you have to maintain those servers, you have to rack those servers, you have to cable those servers. So there is the electrical electric cost that goes there. You have to make sure that the environment is absolutely cool, like it is freezing inside the server room. So that is that cost that has to go there. So this is what we call this, usually we call this capital expenditure, capex, in the technical terms. And what happens in the public cloud is the OpEx, the operational expense, right? So because you are not responsible for setting up your infrastructure, you're just renting somebody else's, but you have to keep paying for the time or the amount that you're using that service. So that is public cloud, that is private cloud. So what's hybrid cloud then? Yes, the most obvious definition would be some public cloud plus some hybrid cloud, some private cloud, right? Yeah, so it is basically that. What is hybrid cloud? It is the combination of good things in public cloud with good things in private cloud. So what do I mean by that? So let's actually talk through that in the later slides. By the way, if anybody has any questions, or Bob, if you have anything to add on to anything that I say, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. So why are we looking at this public private clouds and hybrid cloud stories today? I don't think you don't need me to tell you that we are in the age of digital transformation. We are not actually heading there, we are here. Digital transformation is actually here, right? So we are living through it, and every organization is there rethinking how they're engaging with their customers and employees, maybe partners or even vendors, right? So what does this transformation mean? And what does this, if we wanted to, kind of dissect the definition here, the digital transformation, especially what would the word transformation mean? Let's do you have any guesses, Bob, what this would actually mean in today's IT world? I think you're on mute, Bob.
I would say changing from one way of working to another way of working, for example.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is the dictionary definition of transformation, right? You're transforming from one thing to the other. So that's so you are transforming from this is actually previously, if you rewind, let's say 5 years, 7 years, 10 years even, you've been hearing a lot about moving everything to public cloud, right? You go to any Microsoft conference, you go to any community conference, everybody would say, no, you need to go to cloud. Everybody needs to go to cloud. That is the next big thing. That is like cloud is going to explode and blah, blah, blah. While all of that is still true, but very quickly, people also realized, hey, hang on a minute. There are some things that I can't move to cloud. Right? Like I previously mentioned, it could be because of compliance, could be because of latency issues, could be because of data gravity issues. The data has to stay where the users are, right? These things that people very quickly realized. But cloud kind of stick to us, right? So we like the cloud operational model. We like to be able to pay only for what we use. We like we don't want to reinvent the wheel over and over again, because Microsoft has this amazing monitoring tool, Azure Monitor, already running in cloud. And I've had a little bit of taste of it now. Now what I want to do is I just want Azure Monitor in everywhere, right? Or I want backup. I want Azure Site Recovery, right? Or I want high availability. I want scale sets. I want the ability to manage everything centrally, right? So we have kind of been spoiled by the cloud operational model. So we want to keep our data with us, but also bring the services that the cloud is providing. So there's actually we'll talk about that more in the upcoming slides. But again, like I said, there are new demands and requirements from not only developers, but also users and existing workloads, right? Because as the digital transformation is going ahead, there's also IT is becoming more complex. And when I say complex, I don't mean difficult. It's just like it is getting a bit diverse. You must have also heard of multi-cloud. So what is multi-cloud again? So multi-cloud is putting some resources on private, some on public, some on a variety of public clouds, maybe some on Azure, some on AWS, some on GCP. Right? So that is the multi-cloud environment. Every corner of the business is being impacted. As I like to call it, any business is an IT business today. Do you agree with me, Bob? Because everything runs on IT. It could be a hospital, could be an insurance company, it could be an oil and rig, plant somewhere. Everything is running in the back end on IT. So
Yes.
IT has to be present everywhere, right? So every company needs IT, no question about it, whatever their actual vertical could be, but they need IT. And that is why this IT transformation, this digital transformation is impacting all the businesses. It's not only just IT, not only consulting, not only public, not only private, but also, let's say, quote unquote, non-technical things, right? Like I said, medical and insurance and banking, all these things also. And the challenge is that this needs to be resolved with limited human interaction. And when I say limited human interaction, part of it is automation, of course, right? Because where comes a human, there comes an error. Everybody makes mistake. I know I'm one of the most erroneous people, people that I know, because I know I've just actually been going through setting up the HCI lab with Bob the other day. And do you remember, Bob, is actually some wizards popping on, and I was just click, 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 this, click this, click that, click this, click that. Let's just type this, type that. And then Bob was like, wait a minute, hang on, take it slow. You have to read what is written on the wizard. Just take a minute, take it slow, take a breath, and just actually read what it say. Oh, you kind of missed checking up that box. Oh shit! You have to go back and run the wizard again. So that is the human error, error's nature. So that is something that we have to reduce, so that we have to eliminate is possible, right? So we have to do this all with limited human interaction. So there is limited, scope for error. So again, like I said, customer environments are also evolving. You see here on the top, on the extreme right there, there's multi-cloud. Like I just said, you've got multiple. These are all public clouds, but they are from different vendors. So Azure is Microsoft, AWS is Amazon, and then GCP is Google. We've also got diverse infrastructure. So not everything is running entirely on public cloud. Not everything is running entirely on private cloud. So there is some things that are running on data centers that is private to you. Then there are hyperscalers, which are basically public clouds. There are branch offices. There's a IDC survey, Bob. I don't know if you've heard of that, but I don't remember the actual number, but it is like almost something like 70% of the data, could be more actually, is going to be coming or originated from the edge locations, right? So
Yes.
branch offices, edge locations, think of a retail like let's say Walmart. Just imagine how many shops or outlets Walmart has, and how much data that each of those outlets is generating. Where is that all data gonna go? Right? So are you going to send all of that data, like bunch and chunks of the data to the public cloud, process it there on the public cloud, bring it back, and then just imagine how much time you'll just be sitting there just to bill your whatever things that you purchased. Right? So you don't want to wait there. You want it to be fast moving. You want it to be quick. So that data has to be processed locally somewhere. And then for the archival purposes, you can then save it back to the public cloud for whenever that you need. So a lot of this data is going to be coming from branch offices, which is also why hybrid technology is booming, because hybrid is absolutely perfect when it comes to remote offices, branch offices. And there are also some new technologies coming in. So IoT is actually arguably new. It has been around for a while now, but AI, ML, IoT, these things are they were like VR a little bit ago, because today VR is, yeah, it's good to have. It's kind of fun to play with VR, but it's not incorporated in your work just yet, right? But IoT today is actually being incorporated in your workloads. It is not just a fun, like, okay, you can manage, you can actually turn on and off your fan or your AC or your light using buttons on your laptop or buttons on your mobile. So that is okay. That is one thing that IoT does. But there are also a lot of things that AI, ML, and IoT is doing nowadays, and they are very much incorporated into the actual production workloads. And they are just going ahead and moving. There's actually a reason there's actually even more data being generated from these new devices, IoT devices, right? So that is also coming in from the branch offices. And edge locations are basically the locations where they could be extreme, could be an extreme environment. Say, for example, think of a coal mine, for example, or a submarine, right? Or think of a merchant ship that is sailing across the sea, right? So you don't always have, the best internet or internet at all on locations like this. So you cannot be connected. You cannot send your data to cloud and bring it back to your ship that is sailing across in the middle of nowhere, basically, right? So you have to keep these things in mind as well. And again, as the world is evolving, as the workloads are evolving, there are more and more applications that are being built. And not all of them are being built on VMs. A lot of them are just using, serverless computing. So if you have never heard of that, it is basically where I've got this code that will run my application, and I just dump it. I just paste it in a wizard, let's say, in a canvas. Just you hit enter button, and then it's gonna magically run for you. Now, of course, there is no magic behind it. It's actually There is a VM running somewhere, but it is not visible to you. Right? So not all of you, in your perspective, from the user's perspective, not everything is being run on VMs nowadays. And containers, of course. Everybody here must have known of containers. I won't go too much into detail of containers, but it's basically a new way of packaging your applications, let's say. Right? So it is basically abstracting the virtualization. So you no longer need. I saw a video. There's actually they described it pretty well. It's like VMs are the abstraction of physical resources, while containers is the abstraction of processes, operating system processes. Right. So whenever you package, when you create a container, you also package some some processes that will require to run that set of code. Right. So it is portable, so you can run it anywhere. So you don't have to run it on a specific. This code will only run on Windows 2016 or SQL, blah blah blah. Right. This is a portable code where you can run it anywhere. So customer environments are evolving, and as part of it, cloud is not a place. Cloud, as I like to call it, cloud is a concept today, right? So because like I previously said, it is not only about taking your data and dumping it on cloud, just lift and shift. It is not about lift and shift anymore. And it is also about the platform as a service. It is also about software as a service. It is also about operating system as a service in case of Azure Stack HCI. So cloud is an operating model. It is a concept. And like I said, even I personally can vouch for it that I have absolutely been spoiled by the way cloud works. Whenever I go to Azure portal, it is all like flowers and puppies and cakes. But then when I come back to let's say my on-premise Windows Server, or VMware console, or Hyper-V console, whatever, and I'm like, oh man, now this is not doing for me anymore. I want to consume. I want everything to look like cloud. I want everything to work like cloud. Right. So we've actually been kind of spoiled in that way. It's like cloud is not a place that you go to. Cloud is a concept that you, or cloud is a skill, let's say, that you acquire. Right. So it is not about lifting, shifting. It is about working with the cloud. So what is the desired idea outcomes out of this? So there is two things. It's data center modernization. So when I say data center modernization, I literally mean replacing your hardware, right? So because a part of digitization, a part of modernization is also to replace old things with new things. There is actually a slide coming in that will talk about more of this. So I'll hold this thought for later. And then the other way is also the hybrid acceleration. So this is to deliver consistent infrastructure across your estate. Right. So wherever it is sitting, I don't care if it's sitting on-prem. My VM could be running on my server that I have on my desk, or it could be running on the in East US 2 region of Azure Public Cloud. I don't care. I want the same interface. I want the same operational experience that I want to administer both of these machines equally, right? So that is the two things of what we want to achieve with this digital transformation. And as you see, you can achieve both of these with hybrid cloud operating model. Again, there's a lot of theory now. I realize it's a lot of talking going on right now, but later in the slides, as well as later in the series, we'll actually go and show some of the actual operating models, or how the look and feel of hybrid cloud is, and how it actually entails when you have a hybrid cloud.
So actually, when you were talking earlier, you had that slide with a lot of items in on it. So
Yeah.
there was public clouds, there were a lot of different programs and applications, different infrastructures. Now the problem is for most of us that every time we go to a different concept or a different item in these that the machines which are there, even if it's just a Windows machine, you still need to manage them differently because your monitoring is different, your backup is different. I don't know. compliance, for example, security. Even if you're talking about full VMs, they will be different. And the point that you're trying to get in is you want to be able to learn how to manage this in one way and then use it everywhere. So if I want to have, for example, I want to tag my VMs with some kind of a tag for a department, I want to be able to take that from on-prem, in Azure, in
Anywhere,
AWS
basically.
machines,
Yeah.
whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I just
Yeah.
wanted to use it in one way because it's getting more and more complex, like you said.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, that is the operating model of the cloud that we like so much, right? So we want grouping using tags, for example, like you said, and then we want to be able to manage everything that we have tagged together, right? So I've tagged my some of my VMs are prod, so I want to have a different policy on my prod servers than I have on my pre-prod servers or my test servers, for example, right? So that is where we are evolving, and we've actually evolved quite a lot. It is not something that is going to happen. It is happening right now. Um, so there are two things to it, like again, right? So modernization and transformation. There's a lot of customers nowadays are, like I said, just basically a complete overhaul of their data centers or their edge locations. So they are refreshing their aging infrastructure to HCI. So when I say aging infrastructure, I mean a three-tier infrastructure, compute, storage, and network. We'll talk about that later. To HCI, HCI is basically hyper-converged infrastructure. So what it does is it combines all of these tiers together and in a single device that is easier to manage and easier to maintain. Then while you're going through, one of the most important things in this journey, Bob, is like while you are going through this transformation, you still want to leverage whatever skills that you have acquired over the years, all the experience that you have accumulated, and still be relevant, right? So you want to keep using your familiar management tools. So I am a PowerShell wizard. So okay, so you're talking about this digital transformation. Can I still be a PowerShell wizard when we move to hybrid cloud? Absolutely. Right. So if you're a Windows admin, can I still be a Windows admin in hybrid cloud? Absolutely. Right. So all of these tools, all of this management, you have acquired over the years, they are very, very still relevant to the direction that you're going. Right. So there will be a little bit of learning curve, but not a lot of it. Whatever you have acquired, whatever your knowledge is, you still be able to implement everywhere. And consolidation is again basically a part of, it's not only hardware consolidation, actually, it's also software consolidation. So we are also moving from hardware-based management to software-defined data center model. Right, so where you have a console for everything and you can centrally manage all of your storage, all of your servers, all of your network devices using SDN and whatnot. And all of this is not to give up on any reliability or performance. Just because you are doing a little bit of both does not mean that your systems will be slow. On the contrary, their systems will be faster, right? Because new hardware comes with new capabilities. So there are SSDs and VMEs. There are very fast, high-speed devices that are coming in from the infrastructure point of view, and the software is also getting more and more efficient. So your infrastructure will actually be, and your efficiency, reliability will be boosted when you move on to the new age of the infrastructure. Again, like we said, we are still very heavily dependent on cloud nowadays, and we want to build cloud native applications using containers. So what I mean by that is, this is whatever I'm saying. It is not to be confused that I'm not bashing public cloud. I'm not saying don't move to public cloud. Please do. I would be the first person to tell you to move to public cloud, but only if your workload is fit for it. Don't blindly move to public cloud, right? So assess your users, assess your applications, assess your services, assess your requirements, and then make a decision whether you want to move to cloud or you want to stay on-prem. But having said that, a lot of software nowadays are built cloud native, and cloud native is basically what that means is they are going to incorporate a lot of cloud services like Azure Functions or app service plans and so on, because that does dramatically reduce the amount of code or the amount of maintenance troubleshooting that you have to do to publish an application. So go ahead and build your cloud native applications, but that does not mean that you cannot run that application in hybrid in your public cloud as well, because hybrid cloud will give you that consistent will give you that consistent management, will give that consistent platform, right? Because again, we will go through, I don't want to jump the guns here. Further in the series, further in this presentation, even we will talk a little bit more about how you can be consistent across your infrastructure.
But it was more difficult before, right? So before you were sometimes forced to make a choice between staying in your data center or going to the cloud, because maybe some containerization was only there, or you could have containerization locally, but then you couldn't manage it in the same way. So you're kind of being forced one way or another.
Yeah.
And what we are talking about is actually having a way of combining the things to actually have a choice of running something here or there.
And still manage it from a consistent plane.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of hybrid cloud, right? So you very rightly said that it is no longer a choice whether do I go left or do I go right. You can actually go straight, right? So you can go a little bit of right, a little bit of right, a little bit of left, and you can still reach your destination all the same. So what makes a hybrid cloud anyway? So we have talked a lot about this already. There's a very good comic that I actually found on the internet. So my dad says that the cloud is answer to everything, miss. Because in the previous, like say 5 years back, 10 years back, you say anything, hey, I want to run this application. Okay, run that on cloud. Okay, but I want it to be secure. Oh, no problem. You can still run it on cloud. Okay, but I want the minimum latency that the least amount of latency. No problem, run it in the public cloud, but close to your region, right? So the cloud was apparently the answer to everything. So all the questions you could just write, cloud as answer, and you would be right. But today people have realized that, you know what? Nope, we're not gonna go there. We are not gonna do that, because we still have a lot of other options that we can achieve. So when somebody says, I need you to explain the concept of the hybrid cloud in very simple terms, that's what we am trying to do here. Is when when you get out of this session, you should be able to at least tell a very simple, very non-complex definition of what a hybrid cloud is. A lot of people would just say a hybrid cloud is a technology that you don't understand combined with another one. But that doesn't have to be that case. It doesn't have to be that case, right? Because like I said, hybrid cloud is not new. Public cloud, private cloud. It is just in the middle, right? So you have a little bit of knowledge on public, you have a little bit of knowledge on private. You already know hybrid cloud, and there's nothing to worry about. You've already learned hybrid cloud. Even before it became a thing, you already know what a hybrid cloud is, right? Because you've been working on public as well as private. So it's just a combination of these two things. So is it both or is it neither? Well, yeah, it is both and it is neither. It is not entirely public. It is not entirely cloud, private, but it is public and private at the same time, right? Azure Stack HCI in particular, right? So we have talked a lot about hybrid cloud. I know a few of you might be thinking that we haven't 30-40 minutes in the presentation and we haven't even talked about Azure Stack HCI yet. Well, trust me, that is by intention, that is by design, because we have to understand how we got here. We have to understand what the background is. We have to understand why is it important to go to Azure Stack HCI. Not just I could just come here and tell you about Azure Stack HCI. Okay, Azure Stack HCI is blah blah blah. This, And you would know nothing more than you would know from the, let's say, Microsoft Azure documentation or Azure Stack HCI documentation. We are here to talk to you about the real world. Why have we, reached this destination? So Azure Stack HCI in particular is a combination of two things. It is Azure Arc and HCI. We will talk about Azure Arc in a separate slide because it is a big deal. And so with HCI, let's talk about HCI first, right? So like I said, HCI is hyper-converged infrastructure. So till now or over the years, what we have kind of, even Bob, you're an old timer. You know how the infrastructure has evolved over the years, right? So you would have like some basic servers in the basement, then you would have mainframes, and then you would have actually tiered infrastructure where you have servers separately, compute separately, and then you would have networking components. So this is the traditional three-tier infrastructure that has been going on for a while now. What you have here is you have three layers. You have the virtualization layer, which is also the server layer or the compute layer. Then you have external storage. When I say external, it is external to the server, right? So server only has processors. It is only going to process. Well, yeah, it will have maybe some like cache storage and RAM and all those things, but that is not where you actually hard store your data. External to the server, you would have dedicated storage. So you would have, what is it called? Some Dells. What's the, sorry?
These are sons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you would have external devices attached to your servers via networking, right? So this data will flow from your servers to your data storage, and that is where you will store the data. And then you have networking hardware. So when I say hardware, I mean routers, switches, top of rack switches, and then you've got, I don't know, I'm not a networking person, so I don't even know what happens in networking. It's all magic to me. But yeah, you have three different tiers, right? So you have servers, external storage, and networking. So what are the problems with this? Why do we want to move out of this? Any guesses? Maybe anybody wants to type any guesses or like come online and say, or Bob, do you want to take any guesses? Why do we want to move out of this?
I don't think they can come online. They can only write something in the chat, I think.
Well, yeah, and if anybody wants to write anything, then please feel free to do so. Okay, then Bob, it is you. Do you want to give a guess as to why is this inconvenient?
Well, because you need still to have separate knowledge of each of these and separate people managing it. Everything is still separated from each other. So your virtualization is basically only done based on the CPUs and memory and not based on anything else. So that was the classic way of doing it until a few years ago.
Yeah, a lot of people still are doing it because it has been it's been done over a long period now. So a lot of people still have that infrastructure. But as Bob very rightly pointed out, that they are at the end of the day three independent tiers. So there would be a storage admin, a server admin, and a networking admin, and they may not always get along well, right? Because if something goes wrong, there would be blame game. No, this is not my problem. That is the networking problem. Networking guy will say, no, that has to do with storage. I don't know. So you'd kind of go, back and forth between these three layers, trying to troubleshoot what your actual problem is. So say the servers are from Dell, storage is from, let's say, VMware, and networking is from, I don't know what, Juniper, for example, right? So if something goes wrong, where do you go? Right. So there are three different vendors independent of each other, and nobody's going to admit that it is their fault. So that is also a lot of things to maintain. More more devices to maintain means more cooling required, more spaces required, more networking required. So all of this kind of gets a lot complicated. Then came there's actually a third a middle a middle answer to this. After traditional three-tier infrastructure, they moved on to converged infrastructure. So what converged is basically um, a vendor or a set of vendor, they will collaborate and they will say, okay, with this model of server, this switch will go well. If this with this model of server, this storage and this switch, we have validated that it will work well. So now what you have is you have one vendor to go to. Say, for example, in case of Dell VX blocks, VX block, because I come from Dell, so I know that one. There they would have Cisco servers, a Dell switch. So whenever something goes wrong, you go to Dell, right? And Dell will say, okay, this is validated by us, so we know what could go wrong and we know how to fix this. So in that case, you are not banging multiple doors, you are going to just one vendor. But the products are still different. The network is different, the switch is different, the external storage is different, and compute is still independent. And then came the hyperconverged infrastructure. So it is unified management. So you will have just one single device where you would have processors, you will have RAM, you will have your disk drives. So that is your storage. And then you also have SDN baked into all of this. So what that does is it eliminates the possibility or the problem of having to go to multiple vendors and try to understand what the problem is. Something goes wrong. All right, no problem. This is a Dell system or this is a Cisco system. This is a VMware system. I'll go to VMware and since it is their system, they know everything inside and out of it. So they will be able to, troubleshoot anything and everything that you want. Again, this is networking storage. So external networking is still different. So when I say external networking, I mean like top of rack switches, you still have to connect to it. You still have to connect to a router that goes to different, that goes to internet maybe, or that goes to your express route on, Azure if you are using Azure. So that is the external networking you still have to do, but you have very dramatically decreased the footprint of your infrastructure. So instead of having 3 servers, 3 storage devices, you have one server with all the combined power baked right into it, right? So it's very easy to manage and very easy to troubleshoot. Then the other side of the story is Azure Arc. You can read through this diagram if you want. I'm not gonna read out everything here, but Azure Arc is basically it's an Azure service that is the glue that sticks your non-Azure resources to Azure resources, right? So in a very simple terms. So you could be running a virtual machine, for example. You could be running anywhere. You could be running it on AWS for iCare. You install Azure Arc Agent to it, and that machine will be projected as an Azure resource in your Azure portal. If it is a little confusing to understand now, don't worry. We have, again, as we go through the demos, we'll actually show you what it actually looks like. So you could be actually deploying your resources anywhere outside Azure. You will still have a projection of those resources in Azure, and Azure will treat it as if it was a local resource, right? So Azure resource manager model will still apply to these resources. So you can tag them, you can manage identity and access management right from the Azure portal. You can log the resources, or you can have activity logs, what have you, right? So if it is a server, you can have monitoring logs come over to Azure Workspace. You can have policies, you can have security updates applied to it wherever they are. And so this is the power of Azure Arc. And it is not only about virtual machines, it is also about Kubernetes resources. It is also about bringing data services back to your public cloud as well. Right? So using Azure Arc, even if you're running your services on your private server, you can still use data services like Azure Functions, like we said, or Azure SQL MI, SQL Managed Instance, for example, right? You can still use them from your private server, even if it is not in Azure. So Azure Arc is actually very, very powerful. It is gaining a lot of traction. It is recently it is being worked on a lot, because if you've been following hybrid space, hybrid is probably is one of the most invested spaces by Microsoft recently, because in the recent Ignite as well, there were a lot of new capabilities that came into a hybrid cloud space. including Azure Stack HCI, Azure Arc, and so on.
Yeah, and it is actually built by the same teams as who are
Yeah.
building Azure itself. So,
Absolutely.
the operating system is not a different operating system. It is built by the same guys who are building the operating systems, which are actually running the whole Azure cloud. So,
Yeah, in the backend,
these are the
that's what
same
I.
people.
Yeah, that in the at the back end, that's what they're saying. That I've heard some of the Microsoft guys saying that we are running Azure on Azure Stack HCI. I don't know how. I mean,
Well,
oh,
they built it the other way around, but yeah, it's this is an oversimplified version of it, basically. Yeah,
yeah.
like
So it is being invested on a lot, and people are liking it. Um, because all these new capabilities, all this new, even like licensing changes recently that were announced in Ignite. Again, maybe we'll touch on that later in the upcoming episodes. But everybody's very pumped and very excited about what is to come in hybrid space. So there are actually three things or three products that Microsoft offers when it comes to hybrid space. Um, Azure Stack Hub, Azure Stack HCI, and Azure Stack Edge. Azure Stack Hub is it's basically to oversimplify it again, it is like running Azure.exe on your data center. That is how I like to think of it. And what I mean by that is you could be running. So I'm standing here in in my house. Let's see, I have no internet, but I want, again, I am so addicted to Azure and Azure's operating model that I want everything to look like Azure. So what I do is if I cannot go to Azure, I will bring the Azure to me. That is literally Azure Stack Hub. So when you order Azure Stack Hub, you get a big chunky device um, that will have Azure installed on it, let's say. So it will work exactly like Azure. It will even the Azure portal will look exactly as the Azure portal, the public Azure portal. Most of the services, I am not saying all, but most of the services you will be able to use disconnected from Azure, entirely disconnected on your private infrastructure. Again, if it is confusing you, don't worry about it. It's not really the scope of this conversation here. But that is Azure Stack Hub. Just think of it as running your own Azure in your data center, right? And often disconnected from internet. So where you cannot have that internet connectivity, but you want Azure model, you get Azure Stack Hub. Now it is very expensive, and when I say it looks and feels exactly like Azure, it is more like Azure in other ways as well, right? So when I say that, it's actually if I want to spin up a virtual machine, let's say on my Azure Stack Hub device, as you do in the Azure public portal, you go create a new virtual machine, and then you have a bunch of templates to choose from. You have A series, D series, B series, DS series, whatever. You will see exactly the same on Azure Stack Hub. So when you create a virtual machine, you have to pick from the available options. So these queues are exactly the same.
So you're not going to Hyper-V Manager to
No.
secretly create a machine, which
Nope.
could in theory do
Yeah.
in the other options. This
Nope,
is
that is
just
not an
looking
option.
like the Azure portal.
Exactly. Again,
Okay.
so you are just like as you're giving up all the control on public Azure, you are also giving up all that control in an Azure Stack Hub as well, right? So because you are not looking under the covers, you are just spinning up. You are only using whatever Azure Stack Hub is giving you.
Let's be honest, many people are not interested in knowing how the backend stuff works as long as they get their front-end services running. That's the only thing they are interested in.
That is true. But Azure Stack Hub is actually, it also comes with its challenges. First of all, it is very expensive. Even the smallest Azure Stack Hub, set or device will cost you thousands of dollars, if not millions. It is very expensive, and a lot of time people really don't need that much compute on, say, like a a robo office. When I say robo, I mean remote office, branch office. So in my Walmart retail, I have a very small shop. or my Starbucks that I'm running a very like what I have 10 tables on my Starbucks, outlet here. I don't want an Azure Stack Hub device that looks like a tank. I don't want it here on my, in my outlet. I just want a tiny little server that will just sit somewhere on my shelf and still give me whatever that I want. The thing with Azure Stack Hub is it is like it gives you a lot of things that you don't always need, that you may not need, especially in edge locations, remote locations. Let's not talk about Azure Stack Hub too much. Let's move on to Azure Stack HCI. So in contrast to Azure Stack Hub, what Azure Stack HCI is doing is like you still retain the control. You still have the Hyper-V manager, right? So you can say, I want 8 GB of RAM and I want 58 TB of storage, and I want this processor and I want whatever. So you can mix and match. You can choose your own size of the VM. You are not confined to whatever Azure is giving you. Right? So you can make your own VMs. You can delete your VMs. You can upgrade your own VMs. Again, I'm talking in terms of VMs, but it is not only about VMs. It is also applies to like Kubernetes clusters or data services.
We will show that in upcoming webinars.
Absolutely. So you have control to all of this. You have what is the size of volume or disk that you want to give. So again, I don't want to jump the guns. So let's talk about it later. And Azure Stack Edge is basically it's a first-party device from Microsoft. That is especially it is a very niche use case. Let's say it is especially for IoT, AI, ML, or graphic workloads that you require to run on the edge locations. Again, not the most popular product either. The most popular here one here is Azure Stack HCI because it fits. It is relevant to most of the enterprises, if not all, right?
Yeah.
And all of this is behind the curtains. It is all run by Azure Arc, because, like I said, this is just connecting your Azure services to non-Azure resources. So Azure Arc does exactly that. So it is at the heart of all of this hybrid story. So this is a little more about what Azure Stack HCI is. And a lot of people are actually surprised, Bob, when I tell them, okay, so you've said so many good things about Azure Stack HCI. It is this and it is that and it is hybrid cloud and it is so good and all that. But then I tell them, you know what? It's just an operating system. But when they find that out, it's, oh, so you were just talking about an operating system for all this while. It's like, yeah, it is not a rocket science. It is not something that has been completely, born out of innovation or born out of nothing. It's actually just an operating system. But the key here is it is purpose built for HCI. And what that means is it is hybrid by nature. It lets you connect your non-Azure resources to Azure very easily using Azure Arc again. And it is purpose built, so it does not run anything other than what is required to run virtualization on it. So or S2D for some storage components on it. So what I mean by that is you take Windows Server, it is also a Microsoft operating system. You take Windows Server, you take Azure Stack HCI, and you compare them together, right? So Windows Server is best known as the guest operating system, right? So it runs on anything and absolutely anywhere. You can run it on private clouds. You can run it on public clouds. You can run it anywhere, basically, right? It has a lot of runtimes. It has a lot of processes. It has a lot of roles and features. So you can install DNS on it. You can install DHCP, print server, IIS roles. All these things, print and spooler, all these things you can apply, and you can make a Windows Server function as a feature or as a role, right?
Yeah.
You cannot do that with Azure Stack HCI. Azure Stack HCI does not have DNS on it. You can't install DNS on it. You can't install DHCP on it. Why? Because it is not necessary for virtualization. It only has some Hyper-V components. It has only the bare minimum components that are required to run Azure Stack HCI, Hyper-V for virtualization, S2D, which is storage spaces direct for software-defined storage, and some of the SDN components. That is all there is to it. Actually, you can't even access Azure Stack HCI directly. And what I mean by that is Azure Stack HCI does not come with a desktop GUI option. It is only a core operating system. Right? So if you want to interact with Azure Stack HCI, you interact with the command line. You don't get a start button, and then you don't get all the pretty windows and wizards. So Hyper-V, again, so we have talked about most of these things. Hyper-V is for secure. Again, all of these are very traditional tools, right, Bob? So we've been working on this for so long. So there's nothing new. It's nothing new about
all of this is pretty commonplace if you are running a private cloud, let's say a system center private cloud, since 2012, 2016 versions, those kind of things.
Yeah.
You're getting more and more of these items, especially from the first column in there. Yeah. And basically, that's also how Microsoft has been building their data centers. By becoming more and more generic, just add a bunch of servers with some CPUs, memory, and disks in there, and the software will take care of the rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's basically it.
Again, so if you're a Microsoft shop, a lot of these names are already very familiar to you. Hyper-V, storage spaces direct. Stretch clustering is something is interesting. It is only native to Azure Stack HCI. And what that means is you can have two sites running. It could be active or active passive. So you will have replication going on between these two sites. And if something goes wrong in your primary site, the secondary site will automatically come up or will handle that load on behalf of the primary site as well. This is free of cost. This is included in the features of Azure Stack HCI. So there is no additional cost to running a stretch cluster. This is not something that you can do natively with Windows Server operating system. It is hybrid by design. So Azure Stack HCI cluster, it is a cluster, right? So when you get Azure Stack HCI nodes, you install Azure Stack HCI on it, and then you set up a cluster. And this cluster, you have to register this cluster with Azure. And what that will do is it is a first-class resource in Azure. And when I say first class, which means that it is practically native for as far as like Azure portal is concerned. So it will have a lot of resource provider functions that the regular Azure resources have. You can still apply that on the Azure Stack HCI cluster too. Again, it will be more apparent when we actually go and see in the console. It is always up to date. Since it is actually built against your subscription. If you have been wondering how do I purchase this? So you purchase the hardware from the validated or integrated system from vendors. So it could be like Dell, DataOn, or Cisco, HP, whatever. So you purchase that hardware from there, which will have Azure Stack HCI installed on it, and you will be charged for $10 per core per physical month. Per physical core per month. That is $10. So there are ways to control this cost as well. Again, we'll cover that in the upcoming slides. And you are still, again, we have talked about this already. So you are still leveraging existing concepts that you've already learned. This actually brings us to the end of the theory for Azure Stack HCI. I hope the definitions were clear. I know we realized that this has been a very theory-heavy session, but this is just the introduction. So we will actually go on more hands-on as we go, proceed further in the series. For now, you can actually try out Azure Stack HCI operating system yourself. You don't need to purchase any additional hardware. Even if you have a VM lying around, you can install Azure Stack HCI operating system on it. It is free for 60 days from the day that you activate it, and you can run it on a VM with nested virtualization. So what it will do basically, it will run a master VM, let's say, and then it will create a bunch of child VMs inside of that VM. And sometimes at times it gets confusing.
Yeah.
As I and Bob know, we have been wrestling a bit with nested virtualization for so long now. But it is actually a very efficient way. Once you've got everything set up, you can actually play around and explore almost everything that the production Azure Stack HCI operating system will offer you. So it is a amazing way to actually get hands-on with Azure Stack HCI. There are two ways to go about this. Azure Jumpstart HCI box. Now this was very recently announced by Microsoft at Ignite this year. So again, what this will do is basically the same, but it is pre-packaged set of scripts. So you just go to their GitHub repository, hit on deploy, and what it will do is it will take care of everything in the background. Yeah, there will be some arguments that you have to provide, like your IPs, your own IPs, and the name of the clusters and so on. But that is very minimal manual intervention there, and it will automatically run in the background, and you will have one Azure VM with nested virtualization, and then all the roles installed on it natively. Now keep in mind this can get expensive because this uses a very beefy machine, as Bob and I have found out. It will probably burn through your budget if you don't have a lot of it. But if you have budget, then go for it. It is great for small scale testing environment. And then
of
you have
course, you can turn it off. That's the advantage of the cloud
you
stuff.
you must
It
turn it off.
automatically turns it off every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, when he says automatically, you have to set it to turn off automatically while you are creating the VM. So you have to create a turn off schedule. Anyways, so there's another way of doing the same thing with MS Labs. MS
Yeah.
Labs is amazing in many ways because I love MS Labs, not only because it was written by my colleague at Dell. So I know him very well. I know him personally, and he has amazing set of scenarios. So you go to Microsoft, I think it's microsoft.com/mslabs or something. I will drop the link in the chat. But he has a list of scenarios where you can go to each scenario and you can say, okay, deploy cluster with 4 nodes. That is one simple scenario. Or you have another scenario is like deploy the cluster with AVD installed on it. You can go ahead and just click on the scripts and the scripts will do everything for you. So you don't have to manually go and independently set up things. Again, go check it out. It's on GitHub. MS Labs, it's also a Dell repository where he also has a lot of other cool stuff. So those are the ways you can actually go ahead and try it for yourself. I would actually recommend if you are keen to follow up this series with us, please do see if you can actually run a lab in parallel. So whatever that we are doing here, you can also check it out for yourself. That's it with this. I'll hand it over to Bob.
Yeah, so this is just an extra slide to talk about our community participation program. So since the beginning of 2021, we have been introducing this where you can get the badge, which is to the left top corner. For every session that you attend, you will get one, and then in that empty box, empty orange box, there will be a name, and it will be different for every webinar that you attend. Now, if you attend multiple sessions that either we present, sometimes these are like this webinar, which is organized by TopQore, but sometimes they are also organized by others, for example, at Scomathon or MP University or others where we have been presenting, then we can issue badges like this one as well. If you attain 4 of the badges, then you get a scholar. If you have 8, then you have the champion there at the top. And then going towards the bottom, we've added a few more levels for the people who are attending more and more of our sessions. And I can tell you there's already 1 champion badge issued and a good number of scholar badges. So we are moving forward. And then once we move through the levels, there will also be some incentives added. For example, a free t-shirt or a free training, or especially when you are getting to the later badges, we will also ask you to come and present a session with us. Why not? Because
Oh yeah.
we can talk about, hybrid, we can talk about monitoring, we can talk about security, those kind of things. So there's always something which will fit you once you read those items. And we also have a separate presenter badge which we will be giving out to Samir tonight.
Yay.
So Spandana will handle that one as well. And so everybody who has attended this session will also get the community participant badge for this specific session. So that's everything that we wanted to say about this. So you can go to topcore.com/webinars and find future and previous webinars that we did. You can register for them as well. You will get a link in your email if you do that, and then you can watch the recording when it is online. And we will then also issue you a badge, because we assume that you will actually watch the recording if you are asking us for it. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for attending. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Bob. We are available on everywhere on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook even. So we are reachable. So please feel free to ask us any questions if you have. We'll be happy to try to answer, at least, if not answer.
Very good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day ahead. Cheers. Bye.